Guys, welcome back to Coliseum Forum. Today I am joined by an exciting guest, the comic book man himself. He sells comics from what I hear, Ming Chen. How are you doing today, sir?
What's up, everybody? It's an honor to be here. I'm in so this is a forum, right? It's like we're in the Coliseum.
We are in the
Where's
forum.
where's like the vomitorium?
Yeah, no, I
And
was like surprised you didn't show up with a gladius or a shield. Like you were really unprepared for today.
I was gonna like bring in my inner Caligula today, but you know what? I think we'll keep it clean today.
Yeah, no, let's avoid the blue. I know you do come from that VSQ team, and you know that's where the money's at, the D and fart jokes, right? So,
Yes.
um, with that said, how are things? Like, you've got your podcast going. Conventions are kind of shut down. I know that's super disappointing. So, how are you keeping busy?
I mean, things have been going, under the circumstances pretty well. So, yeah, first and foremost, I miss conventions. If you're a pop culture fan at all, or if you did go to a lot of Comic Cons, you would know I go to a lot of them. At this point in the year, I would have been at one almost every weekend, and I love it. You don't go to a con every weekend if you don't love it. So, and I enjoyed going around the country, sometimes the world, meeting fans of just loving the same stuff I do. So I really miss that aspect. But in the meantime, me and fellow comic book man Mike Zapsik opened up a podcast studio,
Yeah,
which is where I am now, which is aka the place our wives told us to get rid of all our crap and put it somewhere else, get it out of the house. So we did. We opened up a podcast studio where we teach people how to podcast, and we hold classes, and we give people a studio where they can record episodes. And but when everything shut down, they weren't allowed to come in here anymore. And I was like, oh crap. Well, that just kills our whole business model.
right.
What do we do? So for about 8 hours, there was about 8 hours of panic where I'm ripping my hair out, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I'm like, wait, we can use technology to connect people online, and they can record their podcasts and live stream that way. And it yeah, we moved all our clients online, and we're doing with them same thing that we're doing right now.
Right.
Although yours is way fancier, but it's pretty. We moved everybody online, and it worked pretty well. I was really afraid. My biggest fear was like, hey, can you make fun of people across a computer screen? Like, can I bust Mike Zapsik's balls across a computer screen?
Right.
And within seconds, we were like, oh yeah, this works.
Yeah, this
This
works
will
just
work.
fine. Yeah.
This will do. Yeah. So yeah, traditionally we would welcome people into this fabulous pop culture filled studio to record their podcasts, and they would be face to face. And to me, that's the ultimate way to do it. As much as I love you, Billy, hopefully I get to see you in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and we get to have a conversation or a beverage or whatever, or argue about Zack Snyder's Justice League cut in person.
Correct.
But if you can't do that, this works out pretty well as well. Works out extremely well. And yeah, now people don't even have to come down here. Like, we can connect people and have them start podcasts in California or Alaska or Russia or wherever. So
Right.
we kind of open up a whole new world here. So, I love this. I love this. I think it all boils down to, and you probably had the same experience growing up. Fandom, loving pop culture was not the coolest thing in the world.
Nope. No, it
We
was
may have
not.
even, yeah, we may have even gotten tortured for it, and it's rough, man. Like, when you find a character or a storyline, or even the X-Men, or like, man, the X-Men are awesome, and I want to tell everybody, and they're not having any of it because
Right.
they're comics for kids. No one would listen to me about Danger Rooms and Phoenix Forces and
Right. Yeah.
Quinjets, whatever. But we knew this was cool stuff, man, and we wanted to tell everybody about it.
So let me
And
ask you
it was
that. What
tough.
what was your segue into comics? Like, where did you stumble into this medium and like kind of fall into it?
I started when I was in first grade. One of my classmates, for whatever reason, maybe call it fate, call it karma, Ray. He gave me a copy of Avengers 214, my very first comic ever, and I was like, what is this? I was afraid. I was not afraid. I was aware of comic book characters like
Yeah.
Batman and Spider-Man at the age of 6, but I'd never read a storyline, and there wasn't, the MCU. There
Right.
really weren't any comic book movies out back then. The closest thing was the Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk TV
Right.
show,
Right.
but I had never read a comic book. So he handed me this, and on the cover is a picture of Iron Man being taken down by the Ghost Rider,
Yep, that's it.
and
Yeah,
in the background is Tigra and Captain America, and they're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And you see that as a 6-year-old, you're like, "What is this?" Like, I wasn't used to this. I was used to ABCs and 1, 2, 3s
sure.
and maybe Sesame Street. Like, Big Bird was probably the weirdest thing I had seen at that point, and anything close to like a costumed like character. So I took this book, I read it cover to cover, I devoured this thing, and I was like, "What is just this whole world that opened up?" And I was fascinated by the Avengers and this superhero team, this villain who had a flaming skull and a motorcycle,
Sure,
and
sure.
and I was even fascinated by like the Hostess fruit pie ads in there, and there's an ad for the current Saturday morning cartoon lineup in there, like everything about this magical book. Just I was fascinated by it, and yeah, that really got me into. I was hooked,
No,
hook, line, and sinker
that is
right
a
after that.
weird, cool comic to kind of get into comics with
It,
because it's a Ghost Rider crossover with the Avengers.
yeah,
I think don't they end up fighting in New Jersey in that issue too?
I believe they do cross the Hudson River,
Yeah.
and yeah, they end up fighting in New Jersey,
So
and then yeah, and then as you know, the darker, more sinister kind of B story, I guess, is Hank Pym had just got
the
he had just
divorce.
hit Janet Van Dyne.
Yep.
In 213, you see him hit her, and he gets cast out of the Avengers, and they kind of have this weird. They didn't really put him on trial. They're just kind of like, "Well, you hit her, you're out of here."
You're right.
And
It's kind of a one and done situation.
yeah, and as a 6-year-old, I didn't know what was going on. Like, my parents didn't hit each other,
Right.
so I didn't know what domestic violence was. So I was like, all right, I don't know what's going on here. Like, why is
Right.
Hank Pym? Why is he so sad? And why is he why is he staying in a $6 a night motel? I'm not really sure.
Right.
So years later, I actually did go back and finally picked up 213, and I was like, oh, okay, now it all makes sense. So, but that was my introduction into comics, and it's a lifelong love affair from then.
So that's great. We actually already have some questions about that. Did you pick up anything this week?
I geez, I don't even know what it's Thursdays, so I have not been in yet to the store yet today, and yeah, I know the books are slowly trickling in,
Yeah.
and I know your store as well as everybody else is dealing with the whole DC not being with Diamond Fallout, and Marvel kind of trickling everything in. So I have not been to pick up my books yet this week.
Well, if
I don't. Jeez, I feel like I'm in such a fog too. This whole like two
No.
month layoff. You know what I did? I just went back and read a lot of my old favorites during
Sure,
this like weird, like vortex time when we didn't have any new books. So, I'm a big fan of the Jack Knight Starman, that the James Robinson one that I think came out in '96.
right.
I read that one, the trade paperback, and now Mike has all the omnibuses in here. He
Oh,
brought
that's cool.
all his fancy ass library into the studio. Yeah, I was reading that. The Matt Fraction of Hawkeyes. I've been reading
A
all
classic.
reading all those. Yeah, those are amazing. And that was one where I was trying to tell everybody how cool it was, and
Yeah.
my friends were like, "Oh man, that's all purple, white, and black artwork." They accused me of reading a hipster comic, and I'm like, "All right, it kind of is."
That's just good comics. Come on.
But I'm like, there's an issue about the hurricane in New Jersey. Like,
Right.
how can you not love this? Kate Bishop goes out and gets medication for somebody who
Right.
needs it at the drugstore, and no one would listen to me, or my friends wouldn't listen to me. I know a lot of people love that run, and now they're making it into a TV show, and now I can rub it in their faces
Right.
now.
Oh, you remember this book? Right.
Yeah.
So you'd mentioned a lot of the things that are around you right now. You've got your Golden Girls skate deck. You've got your Rocky poster signed by Carl Weathers. This
Yeah.
is stuff that was in your house that your wives were like, "Hey, get this out of here." Somebody that's watching right now, they asked, "Do you still have the USS Flag that you picked up on Comic Book Man?"
So USS Flag, something I had wanted for 30 years. I'm a big GI Joe fan. That was when I was I'm an 80s kid, so 82, 83, 84.
Right.
I wanted every GI Joe product that came out. I watched the cartoons. I read the Marvel comic books, everything about it. And we were in the midst of the Cold War, so I thought we could be nuked any second.
Yeah.
So I really related to these characters. There was a ninja all dressed in white. There was another kind of ninja military guy all dressed in black with a dog. They went to ninja, like a ninja dojo back. They had this huge awesome backstory written by Larry Hama. Like everything about GI Joe, I really loved. I think I felt I could relate to them because I have a lot of friends who are like, "Why aren't you a He-Man fan?" I'm
Right.
like, I can't relate to a big, muscular white dude with like fuzzy underwear and a green
Right.
tiger from another planet. Like I couldn't relate to that. But GI Joe seemed more steeped in reality. So I think I was like, oh, I could be gung ho one day if I joined the Marines, or
Sure.
maybe I could be a snowmobile specialist or something. So when you us as toy collectors, especially as kids, the one that you want is the biggest, most expensive one that they make.
Of course.
And that was the USS Flag. It was a 7-foot aircraft carrier built to scale for the 3 3/4 inch GI Joe figures. And as a kid, you see that in like little fold out catalog.
Yeah.
You're like, what? Whoa, what is this? And even now, they don't really make toys like that anymore. They don't make a toy that big.
No.
Just the logistics and the marketing and the packaging. Like I don't know of any company that's attempted anything that large as a consumer level toy that I can think of.
Yeah.
Um, and I saw that and I was like, man, I will do whatever it takes to get this thing. But the problem was it was almost $100, and this was in a world where the figures were at most maybe $3.
Right.
And my family wasn't rich, and even if they were, they would be there. There was no way they were going to let me have a big 7-foot plastic aircraft carrier. So I never got it as a kid. The jerk kid who lived behind me though,
Oh,
he
got
did
one.
get it because his parents just got divorced. So they were,
Yes.
he pit them against each other until he
Right.
got whatever he wanted. He figured it all. He figured it out very quickly. But um, he got it for Christmas. He let me come over and he let me put some of the stickers on. And I was talking. It comes with a little mini megaphone.
Right.
And yeah, that was cool. But I hated him for it though. And in my head, I was like, one day, man, one day I'm gonna have this thing. And then 30 years went by and I never got it. And then one day, comic book man, a dude brought it in and he made a pretty good offer for it. I think it was unfortunately his offer was 5.5 times what it would have cost had I got it in '83. So
Right.
probably should have gotten it back then.
Sure.
He threw in some extras. He threw in the Sky Striker, the F-16
Right.
GI Joe plane, threw in some extra figures, and yeah, I ended up buying it. And my plan was to take it home, set it back up, have my kids marvel over it, and all that. But it's a 7-foot aircraft carrier.
Right.
Like this is not a small thing. And I'm like, where the hell am I going to put this thing? I don't have like a GI Joe room.
Right.
Like, I don't like all the extra rooms went to my kids like live in them like their
Right.
bedroom. Yeah, maybe I could have crammed them into. Yeah, I could have had kids. Sorry, but you don't have your own rooms anymore.
No, you guys share now. This is Daddy's GI Joe room.
Yeah, this is the GI Joe room, and I'm like, crap. So, it actually sat in the basement of the comic book shop for a couple of years while I figured out what I was going to do with it, and it got to a point where Walt, the store manager, was like, dude, you gotta get this thing out of here. We need room for actual merchandise, like sellable merchandise.
Right.
So I was gonna take it to storage and then figure it out. And in the meantime, he was like, hey, why don't you just set it up on one of the counters at the store?
Sure.
You know, maybe someone will make you an offer. And I was like, I don't really want to sell it, but let's see what happens. So at least I could display it for a little bit.
Right.
And this one day, this guy comes in and he's like, hey, man, are you selling that thing? And I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to, but when I started talking to him, he turned out to be, a really big GI Joe fan, and we hit it off immediately. And I'm like, listen, I don't really want to sell this, but you know what you're talking about. You're a true fan. Like what? Give me an offer. He's like, all right, I'll tell you what, I'll give you this much for it. And oh, by the way, I'm opening up a brewery in town, and if you sell it to me, I'll give you free beer for life. Because he really wanted to get it for himself and his kid.
Right.
And I was like, well, geez, man, I can't really beat that offer. Like, if I drink enough, I could probably make up the difference, or you're probably like, it might pay for itself. And the kicker was like, hey, man, like, you can come over and look at it anytime you want.
Right.
I live the next town over. And I made the deal, and I actually sold it to him. And it actually worked out. We're very good friends now.
Oh, that's cool.
He's actually a beer sponsor here at the podcast studio, so we get the free beer thing. That wasn't That wasn't just it was a real offer. So I'm getting free beer from him. He's sponsoring us. He hosts a weekly podcast here, so it worked out. So and I did promise myself, I was like, listen, you may have sold this one. You had it documented on TV, so
Right.
that'll live on forever. And so what I'm after now is one in box, a USS
New
flag
in
in box.
box.
Yeah, which is no small feat. We're talking 10 to 15 grand easy for something
I've
like that.
I in person I've only ever seen the box for it.
Yeah,
And the box is like what, like 4.5 feet long? Because it doesn't come
it's,
constructed,
it,
right?
no, it looks like like a mini refrigerator.
Yeah.
Should be in there. Yeah.
So we talked about the podcasting thing. You guys have your studio now, which is awesome. Let me ask you this, because there are a lot of people. There's kind of crossovers between the nerd community and
Oh yeah.
podcasting, things like that. If I was an upstart podcaster, what are some of the pitfalls you would recommend avoiding?
There are a couple pitfalls. Number one, most of the most podcasts, but especially a lot of the nerd podcasts, you pick out a co-host that you think will work well, or a friend. And I see the number one reason podcasts crumble is because of podcast egos clashing,
Sure,
if you can
sure.
believe it. I guess you start recording and it's fun at first, and then you start building an audience, and maybe it grows larger. And if you're really lucky, there are offers of sponsorships and live performances and all this. And I see a lot of I see a lot of podcast egos and infighting
Right.
sometimes between the hosts. And then one of the hosts were like, screw you guys, I'm leaving. And then they don't, and then that pretty much crumbles the whole podcast. So, or the other thing I see is that maybe one of your co-hosts isn't as dedicated as you are. So
Sure.
you're like, hey man, you want to record this week? He's like, oh man, my girlfriend needs me, or I don't know, or
Right.
or I'm busy, or any number of excuses, and you don't get an episode recorded. And the other killer of podcasts is not releasing episodes on a consistent basis.
Right.
So, and that usually comes down to a host or co-host flaking, or just maybe me not being as dedicated as you are. So, so rule number one, and I don't do this by myself. I need a guest. I need a co-host. I need someone to bounce ideas, opinions off of. I need someone to argue with. I need someone
Right.
to make fun of. So usually, Mike Zapsik's usually the co-host of the two podcasts that we do,
Right.
and he's great. I can make fun of him. He's very, very, extremely knowledgeable
Sure.
about pop culture and comics. He's also very opinionated. Sometimes, and he to me he's wrong a lot, so that's funny. So like, 'cause, I'm always trying to correct him, but it's great. But you find people who are as dedicated as you are. It's like anything else, but that's one. And then if you're gonna start a show, take it seriously. Treat it like it's like it's your own Seinfeld episode, where you got to put everything into it. We recommend people record once a week, and purely for the fact that when we used to watch TV shows, they would, and before Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and binge watching, shows would come out consistently on the same day each week.
Right.
And I think everybody got used to that. So if you release an episode on Tuesday nights, then they expect a new one the next Tuesday night.
Right.
And if you don't do that, then you're going to lose your audience. It's very simple. Say like Game of Thrones would come out every Sunday night. Maybe you would do a watch party at your house, and and Game of Thrones would usually end up on some crazy cliffhanger.
Right.
Imagine if the next Sunday they're like, you know what, we were going to release an episode, but we didn't really finish it on time, and maybe we'll put it out next week. We're not really sure, but hey, stay tuned, everybody.
Right.
You would lose that audience very quickly. So, I would tell people, just get dedicated to it. And then number three, very simple, just have fun. This is a fun format that wasn't afforded to us not that long ago.
Right.
If you wanted to do anything close to this, I guess you had to go to broadcast school and get a job at a radio station, and they wouldn't let you argue about the Star Wars trilogy for 3 hours. There's
Right.
no way.
Exactly.
So you have this freedom for very low cost and very easy technology to produce any show that you want. So
Yeah.
if you want to argue about adamantium and vibranium and the origins of Wakanda, you can.
I do want to interrupt. Do you have an opinion of adamantium versus vibranium?
Ooh, I I've always like adamantium was the substance that I was aware of first.
Right.
When
Right.
I first learned who Wolverine was, and then I was like, wow, his skeleton and his claws are made of adamantium, like the most, the sharpest, strongest substance on Earth. Like, wow, this is really cool. So yeah, I think I have affinity for adamantium a little more than vibranium is now the cool Wakandan metallic substance now. It's the one that and I guess that was, and I guess they weren't allowed to mention adamantium.
Yeah, I think it was like
that
it was like the Fox Disney
yeah,
thing.
the whole yeah. So yeah, I think had they if they were able to, it would have been adamantium for sure. So yeah, so I lean more toward adamantium for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny that it's because of a legal battle or lawyers got involved.
Right.
Like, well, you can't say that word. I'm like, but that's canon.
Right. Well, hopefully, like, I mean, my big dream is like obviously we get to see the X-Men sooner or later in the MCU.
It's gonna happen. I can't wait.
Right?
Yeah, and I hear the rumors are they're gonna do the same thing they did with the Avengers. You're gonna see the individual
kind of show
movies,
up,
so they get all the backstories and stuff out of the way,
Yep.
and then boom, one day
that would
they all
be,
come together under a common threat.
and then maybe we do get a definitive vibranium versus adamantium. Like at that point,
Yeah,
then you're like, oh, it's canon in MCU, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think you gotta mention it. You can't sweep that under the rug. It's so, I think to me it's pretty important for sure.
So the plan is as of now, you're actually going to join us down here at Coliseum of Comics for the 4th of July.
I am, yeah. The big question right now is like, hey, are cons ever going to come back? Are there
Right.
going to be any Comic Cons this year? And I'm like, man, I don't know. Things are so crazy right now and up in the air. It's probably not going to happen, and it saddens me. There are so many great conventions out there. You guys, very close. MegaCon, I think, is probably a big one in Orlando, and there are ones in Miami and all over the place. And for us, these were the things we really look forward to. And I met a lot of people who would save up all year just to maybe go to one or two conventions.
Right.
And they live for that. And I live for it as well. And I really miss that. And they will come back eventually. I think we're gonna have to ease into it slowly. But when I heard about this opportunity, I was like, all right, this is going to be a small, controlled environment,
right?
And it's going to be kind of like a convention environment, but much safer, in a cool store, and the flip side of that is I'm trying to, all of us are trying to support the comic book industry, which took a big hit these last couple months. And if I can come down and and do that, encourage people to not lose their fandom, and come down to Coliseum and pick up their books, or maybe it's their first time there, or maybe they're just coming back, and that helps them come back. That would be amazing. I know how many Coliseums are there now?
We've got 8 total. 8.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. Even the Stash. We tried expanding once. We had a store in the LA area for a couple years.
Oh wow!
And it's tough. It's tough, especially in the comic book industry, to have multiple locations.
Yeah.
And now, granted, Brian Johnson managed that one, the big bearded guy from Comic Book Man. And while I don't blame him fully for that one not being there anymore, I'll place a little blame on him. Sure. Yeah, because he was the guy. He would manage a store, and people would be like, "Hey, man, this book any good?" And he'd be like, "Oh man, I don't like comics." And then he would kind of be like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess see you later." So I can't place all the blame on him, but I place a little bit. But yeah, to have multiple locations is pretty crazy. I know Coliseum made a grand effort to curbside pickup.
We do, and we're still doing the curbside thing. If people, some people aren't feeling safe just yet, they can still do curbside at any of our locations. So. We're doing what we can.
But I thought this was a really nice way to just kind of ease back into it, and the events, and I know you guys is one of the biggest and brightest shops in the world, really. So I've never been there. I think you just told the story how Kevin Smith wandered in somewhat
to our Claremont location.
Yeah, the Claremont location where his brother and his mom live. So, which is cool. I can't let him have all the fun.
I mean, this is great. I mean, you can just tell us more how good we are. That's a
I mean 8 locations, man. That's you
yeah.
gotta be you can't be slacking off and not love what you're selling if you and have 8 locations. Like you just can't do it. So
So this is
uh
something that I honestly always wondered because I've obviously watched Comic Book Men,
yeah.
followed The Walking Dead. It was very easy to follow up with. Um, how many times did you actually run the register at the stash?
Like lifetime. See the thing with Walt and Mike, they never if they they're the register is like the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's it's that one thing where they kind of lord over it. So I didn't get to touch the register very much. Yeah, at times they would be maybe in the back and they didn't want to walk all the way up to the register, and I was like, all right, I got this. I'll
Right,
wait
right.
this out. Yeah. Um, and Walt and Mike are very old school. They're if they could live perpetually in the year 1978, they probably would. So as such, the register, while it's not like the old school one with the little no sale flag on it,
Right.
it's a pretty old register. I imagine most comic book shops, most retail outlets have moved to iPads or some kind of computerized system, scanning barcodes,
Yeah.
automatic
Yes.
inventory,
Yes.
all of this. Yeah, not these two. They go with the old school cash register. They're swiping credit cards. I'm surprised they don't have like the carbon system.
Right. The old slide. Yeah.
Yeah, but even I don't know if you do any of the ordering over at Coliseum, but they do it all manually with their orders with Diamond. It looks like they're doing a fantasy football draft, except for comic books.
Do you guys do like subscriptions there?
Oh yeah. They I think reservists are the lifeblood of any comic
Oh,
book
for
shop.
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know if you read this. While we were shut down, our customers weren't. We were mailing their pull
Right.
list to them. But one day Kevin was like, "Hey man, how many reservists do we have?" And Mike kind of added it up, and he was like, "Hey, how much do you think that is total?" And Mike did some rough numbers, and Kevin was like, "Hey, you know what? I'm just gonna buy everybody's pull list, and just as a way of thanking them for remaining loyal to us during this time." And I'm like, "Holy crap, man, that's awesome!
Yeah. That's
What a
crazy.
cool gesture." So yeah, he bought everybody's reserve list for I think like a month, I think, which is it's not chump change. And
No kidding.
yeah, and yeah, talk about loyalty. Imagine you're a reservist. Like, well, you can't cancel now. You can never
Yeah.
cancel.
Oh no. Now you're
Guy
stuck
owns-
forever. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only did the guy own the store buy all your comics for you, he bought Kevin Smith bought all your comics for you.
Yeah.
So
That's a
yeah.
story, right? That's a story you tell your buddies like that. Yeah. That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah, that's a story. Also, I always love telling this story. When we first opened the store in '97, Kevin put a big ad, I think, in every comic book. Was like, "Hey, I'm opening up a store. If you start a reserve list, we're giving you 50% off." And we were like, 50?
Yeah.
It's like, Kevin, the average
Right.
for reserves usually 10, 15, maybe if they're really loyal, they get a big stack every week. But 50 is
That's
all right. It's your store. All right,
right.
50 it is. So it's not 50 anymore. Needless to say, that was not a lifelong
a
promotion.
viable
But-
business model. Yeah.
yeah, but if you know Walt Flanagan from the show, the manager, he's pretty frugal.
Right.
He and a lot of people call him they're like, why is Walt always lowballing people? I'm like, dude, it's not lowballing. This is how we stay in business. It's
Right.
a secondary market. And that's the reason why the stash has been in business for 23 years is because of Walt Flanagan. But when Walt saw that 50% off thing, he was like, "Dude, you can't.
You're killing me.
Yeah, you're killing me. But it's not my store. I just
Right.
manage it. So carry on." So, yeah. So if anyone has a time machine, go back to '97, come up to Jersey, and reserve all the comics you want because you're getting 50% off for a couple months.
Oh yeah, 100% would take advantage of that.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
at the point when Comic Book Men kind of came around, at that point you were kind of running the website. That was your job,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. And I just got that job because I was a fan.
Right.
I built a Clerks fan website for Kevin years ago, back in 1995, and he saw it, gave me a call, said he was going to be making more movies, and he's Kevin's always 2 steps ahead of everybody else. So he was like, "Hey, this internet thing, I think it might take off. I think websites."
He might have been onto something.
yeah, I think I might be onto something. Can you build more of these websites for me? Because I'm going to be making more movies, and I'm going to send you a bunch of never before seen behind the scenes photos that I have in just in a binder that you should scan and put online. And he really wanted to kind of open up his filmmaking world and some of his personal world out to the world via the internet, and that's what we did. I ended up building his the website for his production company, and the big thing on that website was we put up a message board
Right.
where Kevin could come down and answer people's questions. And this was pre Instagram, pre Twitter, pre Facebook, no, pre Amazon, pre Google.
Right.
There's none of this stuff out there. So for someone famous, someone in Hollywood, to interact with normal people over a computer was pretty big back then.
Right.
And he was one of the first guys to do it. He was one of the first uh, filmmakers, directors, like first really famous people anywhere to interact with his fans. And I think it paved the way for everything else that was to come later on.
Very cool. But at this point, you're maintaining the websites, you're
Yeah,
doing some
yeah.
stuff, and then do they come to you and they're just like, hey, by the way, you're gonna be on TV now?
That was pretty much how it happened. So Kevin ended up hiring me full time back about in 2002. So I set up his first online store. Like I was kind of his social media manager before there was any social media, and we would hold like fan driven all day film festivals in the town that Kevin shot all his movies in. That was cool. Shortly after that, we started podcasting, and that was all Kevin. Talk about that show that you can say whatever you want and talk about whatever you want. That the podcast meeting was perfect for Kevin. He's a guy who does Q&As and they go a minimum of 3 hours. So I was like, hey man, you want to record a 3 hour podcast? Go for it. And he did, and it became very big. And he got all of us into it, onto his network, and he got all of us starting shows. So that was cool. And the podcasting kind of led to TV in a weird way. But the TV show started because The Walking Dead took off on AMC, and the executives up there was like, wait a minute, this Walking Dead is based on a comic book, huh? So there might be other comic book fans out there, and maybe we could get that audience.
Right.
And they're like, well, how do we do that? It's like, well, make a show about comic books and pop culture. They're like, great. What would the show be about? And whatever powers over at AMC were like, well, we don't know. Maybe we should talk to somebody who would know. And they contacted Kevin. And I think at first they're like, hey man, you want to develop a show about comic books and pop culture? And I think he was like, nah, I got enough to do.
Right.
And I think they were like, well, all right, if you were to create a show about comic books and pop culture, what would you do? How would you do it? And he was like, to be honest with you, I would take that show Pawn Stars that they shoot in Las Vegas with all those weird characters and, them selling muskets and historical documents. Why don't you just take that but put it inside of a comic book shop and have people bring in action figures and key issues, and maybe every so often like a cool guest could come in, like Stan Lee could come in or something. Sure. And they're like, congratulations, you just created a TV show. But I think I think his original idea was to find a comic book shop, could have been Coliseum, and then find 4 guys to be in the shop and then shoot a show about people bringing in stuff. And never really, I don't know why, but never really telling the executives at AMC that he had his own comic book shop that they could have shot in.
Right.
And that there were 4 guys in there that they could have used. But when it came time to shoot, they needed to shoot a pilot episode. Something to prove to the executives that this was a viable idea. That this summary idea that they came up with, when expanded into a TV show, would actually work.
Right.
So they were like, hey, we have to shoot a pilot. Do you know where we need we don't have a big budget for this thing? And Kevin's like, oh yeah, well, where's all the budget going? They're like, well, we're gonna have to find a location and pay a guy to rent it out for 3 days. And Kevin's like, well, you don't need to do that. I have a comic book shop you could shoot in.
Right.
And they're kind of like, why didn't you tell us this like 2 months ago?
Right.
I guess they didn't know. And he was like, hey, I got 4 guys who already work there. Just put them in as placeholders. if you need them, if you need to, you can tell them what to say. But they work well off each other. Just use them for the purposes of this test pilot episode.
So you were already at the stash.
I was there already. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, I'd been hired already. The stash had been in business for at that point like 14 years, I think. So, but yeah, for the purposes of just putting something on film and showing it to the executives to get a budget and everything, they needed to see if this weird idea would actually work.
Right.
And they used the four of us that were there already because they didn't have to pay us. Because Kevin said, you can use those guys for free. You can use my place for free. Just put all the money into making it look good,
Right.
so we can actually get a show. And so yeah, we shot like a pilot for 3 days. They edited it and they put it in front of the executives at AMC, and they're like, "Wait a minute, this is your shop, and who are these four guys? They're really funny." Kevin was like, "Oh no, pay no attention to them. They just work there." And they're like, "Idiot! These are the guys for the show."
Right.
These guys are like, look at the way they interact with each other. Look at how they make fun of the little Asian guy. That's funny.
Jeez.
Like look at and they're I think they're like, are they really like this? And I think they actually went back and listened to some of our podcast episodes.
Right.
And the podcast episodes are Walt and Brian arguing with each other,
Right.
them making fun of me and sometimes Mike, and just all of us interacting with each other.
Right.
And I think it was actually the podcast episodes which cemented that if that we would have this kind of dialogue with each other, this easy making fun of each other dialogue, all these what if questions, that if we were able to translate that dialogue onto screen, that we would have a decent show. And so it's really a combination of weird events happening all at the same time that led to Comic Book Men. Yeah, I think a lot of people were just like, oh, they just shipped down some cameras, threw a crew in there, and it just kind of worked out. Or maybe they wrote lines for you guys. I'm like, dude, I can't memorize all that. Like, you can't. I don't even think you can act the kind of ball busting that we do on that show. I don't think you could act that way and make it genuine. I mean, I think very few people can, and those guys have gone on to be, $1 million making comedians.
Right.
Guys like Seth Rogen and Kevin Smith. Like, these are talented people. We're not that talented, so all that dialogue, that ball busting dialogue between us was made up on the spot for sure.
See, I would argue otherwise. You're definitely a talented guy. So Comic Book Man, it ends in what, 2017, 2018, right?
2018, was when the last episode.
7 or 8 seasons in.
7 seasons, 96 episodes.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then so that ends. Obviously, you're a podcaster and a developer before that. So you kind of fall back into the podcast thing. Now you do 2 podcasts, right?
Yeah, and when Kevin pitches to us, he's like, "Hey, I want you and Mike to start a podcast."
Right.
We're like, "I don't want to do this." Like, I was the guy who uploaded his podcast onto iTunes.
Right.
That was my job. I was happy sitting behind a computer.
Right.
I was happy being the Ned to Kevin's Spider-Man. I was the guy. I love being the guy in the chair.
Right.
I love
the guy in the chair. It's a good role.
Yeah, I love and I'm kind of Asian like Ned too. So not kind of, I am Asian like Ned. But Kevin was expanding his whole network, and he was like, "Well, you guys start a show. I don't have a show about pop culture and comic books. You guys love talking about pop culture and comic books. Start up a podcast about comic books." And we were like, we're a couple of nerds.
Yeah.
Ugly looking nerds at that. Well, we don't. Although it doesn't matter on a podcast, really. No one sees you, but. I was really worried though. I was like, who's going to listen to this? I think that was the biggest worry. I was like, what if we put it out there and nobody listens? And Kevin was like, don't worry about that. I'll help promote you guys. And you'll find, if you're talking about Star Wars and Back to the Future, you'll find all the other Star Wars and Back to the Future fans. They're going to love this. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'll give it a shot. And we set up some gear on a beat up poker table in the back of the comic book shop, which you may have seen on Comic Book Man. It's that same green poker table.
Yeah.
And we recorded our first episode, and it was like time just flew by. We had so much fun talking about nerd stuff, talking about pop culture, talking about all the stuff that we loved, and we were like, wow, that was fun, man. And I didn't really want to admit that Kevin was right, but he was right.
Have you gone back after the fact and been like, yeah, okay, you got me?
Oh yeah, he knows. Yeah, we recorded that first episode back in 2011, and I think we just recorded our 311th episode in 2020. So yeah, we kept it going, and I think podcasting is one of the things over the last 10 years that I never lost a love for. Like I probably love it more now than the day I started. And as you know, with stuff, that's very rare. You know,
Yeah,
you go into things, you fall out of things very quickly. It's like, oh,
correct.
I'm gonna learn how to juggle. I'm gonna juggle fire, and they're like, this isn't that fun anymore. And a year later, a month later, a week later, you're like, I'm not. That the juggling kit sits in a corner.
Right.
But this, and I do that all the time. Just I can't. I get really into stuff, and then one day, like, that was fun. Let's do something else. But yeah, podcasting, live streaming. I think that's something I probably love more now than I ever did.
So
And
I've
I'm hoping, really hoping to pass on that love to everybody else for
no,
sure.
this is great. I mean, I'm here in sunny Florida. You're in the doldrums of New Jersey, and we're just having this conversation talking about like cool nerd stuff, right? Like where
Yeah,
else
for
do you get to
sure.
do that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And then I was like, wait a minute, we can live stream this. So yeah, we
Yeah.
have people watching us now, and then they can watch it later if they
Yep.
want to. And
So
it just kind of lives on digitally forever. I think that's so cool, man.
no, we actually after we do these shows, I go home. I have two kids, and we watch. It's called the Daddy Show at home, and they will watch the Daddy Show. Yeah, yeah.
It's like, look, Daddy's on TV. I airplayed it on there. I hooked up an HDMI cable.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's still for kids, man. It's still cool being on a TV screen. It's
Yep.
great.
So we have a couple of questions from some of the viewers. First
That's the
question
way,
is
everybody.
it's a two-parter. Favorite convention and after party you've ever attended?
Oh man, the favorite convention. That's a tough one. Immediately, the one that comes to mind is Dragon Con in Atlanta that
Sure.
takes place every Labor Day weekend. That is just like a cosplay free for all. It's not even really a Comic Con because there aren't a lot of comic book vendors there.
Right.
Although there's a big building of vendors, but what people really go for is to dress up in the best cosplay that they can, and drink their faces off and party for 5 days with fellow geeks, with
Right.
fellow nerds. And I think it's the one place where you can really be yourself, whether it's alcohol fueled or not. It's the one thing, the one place where you can really be yourself and make new friends, and maybe get a little crazy, and no one's going to look down on you for it. I've only been going the last 3 years, and
Oh, wow.
I've been going for multiple 20, 30 years. I can't even remember. And I knew of it only because Kevin went down. He was a guest in 1996.
Oh.
It was him and Mark Hamill of all people, and but I didn't know it as this kind of like cosplay Mardi Gras
Right.
until I got down there, and I was like, oh man, this is awesome. This is going to be fun. I should probably pace myself. This thing goes for 5 days. And yeah, it's one of those cons that it goes like 5 days straight. So there's
Right.
no break. There's a cosplay rave at 3 a.m. There's this, and there's just no shortage of nerddom there. And it's I think most people feel at home there. That's it's pretty cool. That's one of my favorite ones. Comic Palooza in Houston is one that's welcomed me back every year. And they say everything is kind of bigger and greater in Texas.
Right.
That one's amazing. I was last at MegaCon. It's been a little while. I was there in 2013 or 14. 2014. Had a great time in Orlando. Had a great time at MegaCon for sure. Emerald City Comic Con and C2E2, both run by the same company.
Sure.
Those are two, and they run New York Comic Con as well. But I think Emerald City and C2E2 are massive conventions that I have never really felt too crammed or crowded in there. It's very
Sure.
well spaced out. They get great guests, and just Seattle and Chicago are magical cities as well. So those are some of I could go on and on, but that's a quick sampling of some of my favorite conventions for sure.
What about convention after parties?
Oh, the after parties. My friend Moshi, as you know, he works over at Coliseum now. He traditionally throws a couple of really great MegaCon after parties. I was introduced to him. He threw a zombie themed after party, and when I walked in, he had, most after parties they throw it. It's like, hey, meet us at this bar, and that's the party. Like,
Right.
okay. Moshi will deck this whole thing out with blood and zombie strippers and crazed doctors, and he'll usually get DJ Elliott, who is based in Orlando,
Right.
who DJs for Disney. He's one of the greatest DJs, like nerd DJs in the world. And black lights, like he'll turn this into a whole experience.
Right.
And, any party that from Moshi Productions is pretty amazing. I did also go to it was a karaoke after party hosted by Mr. Belding, Dennis Haskins.
From Saved by
And
the Bell, Mr. Belding.
Saved by the Bell. And I was like, dude, I gotta go to this.
Yeah, of
Like, how
course.
many times you get to tell your friends you went to a karaoke party with Mr. Belding?
Yeah, no.
And it was awesome. It was amazing. He's a fun guy, man. Like maybe you don't think as Mr. Belding is a hard partier,
Yeah.
but that guy can party, man.
Really?
And,
He
yeah,
gets
and
down?
he would pick up the mic every so often and sing something. I was like, this is as a Saved by the Bell fan.
Yeah.
It was insane.
How surreal
guy,
is that?
It's very surreal. Yeah, that guy's a good dude, man. He knows how to party. So that was a fun one as well.
So, okay, next question from a viewer. What's the best or the coolest guest you've met either at the shop, doing the show, or on your podcast?
I mean, I think we got to take out Stan Lee.
Yeah, that's not fair after that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Stanley came in twice on Comic Book Men. We've seen him multiple times at conventions, and we all miss him.
Of course.
We all miss him, but I just missed that presence. When I knew we were at the same convention, I think like the whole atmosphere changed.
Right.
The guy, like if he was never born, like we wouldn't be in this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have all this stuff on the walls probably.
Sure.
We would not be going to all these crazy conventions. So, that was cool. I got to meet Mark Hamill briefly at New York Comic Con a couple years ago. I got an autograph from Carrie Fisher, which I think right up there is a small Star Wars poster.
Yeah, right behind you. You're touching it.
Yeah, that I had her sign. It was Sunday evening, and I was walking by her booth, and she was packing up, and I had that poster in my hands. I was like, oh man, should I get her to sign it? I was like, man, I don't know. She's packing up. She's probably tired. I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's go get an autograph. And she did, and that was 2016 or 17. So
wow.
she passed away shortly after, a couple months after, and I was like, wow, man, I'm glad I got to
have that experience for sure.
Got that autograph, and I pass on to other people. I was like, don't hesitate. If you see somebody that you admire at a con or on the street or whatever, go say hello. Don't be afraid. Don't miss that moment, because you never know if you're going to get it back again. So
right.
And we were talking. You're a big Bill Paxton fan.
I am a big Bill Paxton fan. Yes,
and,
that's a great example.
Yeah, and I was at the aforementioned Comic Palooza in Houston, and they had a whole Aliens reunion. So almost every member of the Space Marines and Sigourney Weaver came out, and Bill Paxton was there, and I got to be in a group shot with the whole Aliens cast.
Oh, that's
and,
awesome.
The photo ops are very quick. You take the photo and then you leave. But as I was like, hey, thanks guys. And as I was about to leave, he turns around, shakes my hand. He's like, hey man, great to meet you. I was like, oh dude, freaking Hudson, freaking
class
Bill
act.
Paxton, Titanic's Bill Paxton, Tombstone Bill Paxton turned around and insisted on shaking my hand. I was like, that was cool. So yeah, I mean that was definitely a cool interaction with him. And again, yeah, sorry we lost him too. He seemed like nothing but a class act. So. But again, take that shot. If you have a shot to get a photo or whatever, take that shot for sure. But those are, man, the number of people we've met, mainly through the TV show,
right?
Pretty crazy. Adam West, Ralph Macchio, Billy D. Williams,
right?
Peter Mayhew, Jim Lee, Neil Adams. It's been pretty crazy. We were very blessed. And we were very lucky.
I'm a comic book guy. You're a comic book guy. We've all got Holy Grails. What was your first Holy Grail comic, and what is your Holy Grail comic now?
Oh man, I mean, you know what I'm doing? I want every key issue, just like any comic book collector wants. We all want the 9/8 Hulk 181. Right. We all want the 9/8 Giant Size X-Men. We all want the Journey into Mystery 87. We want the Amazing Fantasy 15.
Right.
All of that. I think growing up, I always wanted Amazing Fantasy 15.
Sure.
I love Spider-Man, and I remember reading, and it's funny. I don't know if a lot of people realize it's only the origin of Spider-Man is only like 8 pages.
Right.
And then Fantasy 15. It's not very long, and the tone is very it's very lighthearted and 60s, and hey, Petey wheat cakes, and he gets made fun of, and you see the tear rolling down his cheek.
Yep.
Like it's not Shakespeare, but it kicked off everything.
Right.
that and the Fantastic Four. I mean, we could argue this, but Spider-Man is universally beloved. I
Without a
have
doubt.
not. I've never met anyone who's like, "Oh yeah, I don't like Spider-Man." I'm
I
like,
mean,
dude,
he literally is the most relatable superhero. Don't get me wrong,
yeah,
X-Men, that's my favorite thing. That
sure.
was my holy grail. And actually, my boss here at Coliseum, Phil, gave that to me for Christmas.
Oh
It's the best
man,
thing that's ever happened. Yeah.
wow.
Um, but no, Spider-Man's the most relatable superhero. He goes home, he washes his costume. You never see Captain America at the laundromat. Like this just doesn't
Yeah,
happen. So
yeah, for sure. I think growing up, yeah, I've always wanted Amazing Fantasy 15. Probably not happening. Even the super beat up copies
right,
are like, how much is that? There's no cover on that. Oh, that's $8,000. I'm like,
right.
okay. So, yeah. Now, what am I looking for now? Yeah, all my stuff now is really weird. Like I'm constantly fantasizing about either waking up in the 70s or taking a time machine back
Yeah,
to just a random drugstore on the week that Hulk 181 comes out
right.
and buying every copy.
Oh yeah. Just like because
Oh, I
there were no speculators back then, right? So if you walked in, that the newsstand guy's just like, that's weird, but okay.
yeah, and I have it all planned out. It's like, okay, I'll get whatever Wells Fargo delivery man like in Back to the Future at the end of Back to the Future 2,
Right,
or I'll get a I don't know a perpetual safety deposit box,
right,
or maybe an super airtight container. I'll bury it
right.
somewhere where I know it'll like I can go back and get it in 2020. I'm constantly having this fantasy. So, but I know everyone wants 181. Like I want a bookend. I love 180 and 182 as well.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
with the value stamps and everything, man. I'm yeah. But what I've been doing now is trying to buy just like going to cons and going to the vendors. I was like, all right, what key issues do you have? But I want the most beat up copy that you have.
Really?
And yeah, I love that the beat up copies have a story.
No, I agree.
Some kid picked up, Tales of Suspense, 54,
Right.
57, at the drugstore, read it, kept it under his pillow, maybe curled it up in his back pocket, rode to his friend's house with it. And then if I buy it, like somehow this winds up in my hands and I'll never know what story it went through.
Yep.
I can make up something. So, yeah, that was one of them. I picked up first appearance of Hawkeye.
Yep.
Tales of Suspense, I think 54, 57. I can never remember. And I had Stan sign it for me, and I got it graded.
Oh, that's cool.
But before all that, I was like, you know what? I want to read this thing.
Yeah. No,
I wanna
absolutely.
read it. And everyone knows Hawkeye, but have you ever read the first appearance of Hawkeye and
Right.
and him and hitting on the Black Widow and kind of being kind of creepy actually?
Right.
It's very 60s, like yeah, kind of like the go-go free love 60s.
Yeah.
It's a very weird issue actually, and one that they could probably not release today even.
Right.
But that was his origin, and I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy, man. That's
Right.
pretty awesome. So, yeah, so I'm on the hunt, man. If anyone out there, you got beat up copies of key issues that, 'cause I think anyone can drop whatever 10, 12, 18 grand on
No.
a graded
Right.
copy of whatever, and I love it, but you have this slab comic, you take it home. Well, what do you do with it now? I guess you can hang it on the wall or display it somehow.
Right.
But it's kind of sad. You can't read it.
Well, no, that's true. Like, so I can 100% agree with you. Like my Omega Man,
Yeah.
my first appearance of Lobo, it was
Oh,
like
man.
a $5 beater copy. Like a mouse at some point chewed on it. Like, but I still have the first appearance of Lobo, right? It's just that's part of the fun of collecting, I think.
Yeah, I would love a first printing Eastman and Laird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1.
Yeah. Okay.
When Kevin Eastman came on the show and we were talking, I was like, hey, that first run you did of like 3,000 copies, like what's the story behind that? It's like, oh man, we found a publisher and they all shipped to me and Peter's apartment in Rhode Island, so we had boxes and boxes of our first comic there, and
Right.
then they just kind of went out into the world. And to me, it would be cool to have that first printing, knowing that at one time it sat in their apartment.
Right.
At one time, these two crazy kids didn't know that they had launched a global, timeless,
Like a phenomenon at this
pop
point.
culture phenomenon that would not only entrance me, but my kids as well. And and it's never going to stop. The turtles.
Oh no, without my 3-year-old, my 2-year-old at home right now are Ninja Turtle crazy.
Yeah, and I just love it. Just started out with a joke. It's like, what's the weirdest, weakest,
Yeah.
most ridiculous character we could come up with?
And my first comic was like it came out of a spinner rack at a deli, and it was a Ninja Turtles reprint in like
Yeah.
1990. So
That's awesome. And yeah, yeah, I just love like, hey, let's just actually we're and they basically just ripped off everything from Marvel Comics and Daredevil and that yeah their
Yeah,
printing has Daredevil in it, although they're not allowed to
right.
mention it by
We
name.
know
And
who it is.
yeah, you know how it is. I thought that was a cool kind of tie-in, but not official tie-in. I was like, man, these guys are rogue, man. These guys are awesome. They're rebels, man. So yeah, like yeah, one day I will have that
One
one as
day.
well.
So
One day.
it looks like we have time for about one more question.
Yeah, 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 fire
Uh,
away.
I heard you had you have a good story involving Michael Rooker, who plays he's
Yandu,
Yondu.
Merle,
Yep.
Mr. Svenning from Mallrats. So if me and Michael Rook are at the same convention, he always insists that I moderate his panel.
Okay.
For the pure fact that he knows that he can toss me around and basically beat me up, which looks very weird. You're talking about,
Yeah.
Michael Rooker, 6'3", 6'4", 250 pounds maybe, and I'm easily probably a foot shorter than him, and he's probably got me outweighed by 100 pounds or so. But he's really he's into the martial arts. I think he does Aikido.
Okay.
And he's constantly working out. But at these panels, he'd be like, "Hey man, check out what I learned this week," and I'm like, "Okay." So we stand up. He's like, "All right, pretend you're gonna stab me with a knife or hit me over the head with a bat or something," and all of a sudden I'm on the ground and my head's spinning and I'm seeing stars. And the panel audience loves it. So he and I can take a few hits here and there.
Right.
So he knows he can throw me around. Yeah, I think one time he did some weird move, and yeah, all of a sudden I flattened my back on the panel stage, and it when I went down, it caused this big boom, and I think someone was at the other end of the convention going like, "What the hell was that?" And someone's like, "Oh, don't worry, that's Michael Rooker and Ming. That's they're doing the panel right now." So it's kind of become a thing where he's going to throw me around. So, but yeah, despite all that, it's like he's like a big brother, little brother thing. I guess he's just
Fair.
constantly beating me up, and
He does it out of love.
I love it. I can take a hit. So,
Fair.
yeah.
So, guys, this is we've done our Coliseum forum today with Ming. He's going to be here in Coliseum Comics, hopefully with us July 4th. We're gonna have some really, really cool events. Follow us on social media to find out more about that. Ming, you've been awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you to your team, the unseen production team behind you, and yeah, thank you to Coliseum. I can't wait to see you guys soon.
Next week on Coliseum Forum, we're going to be meeting with Jim Ballant, former artist of Catwoman, currently doing Tarot. Really excited about that. So tune in next week, Tuesday at 2 p.m. I'm going to do it too.